doodah. Hang on a minute. Richard needs to be. Hang on. Is it coming up? Coming up. Done. Right. Richard needs to be a to let the other two on. Pat was with us last night. She's with us. She'll be with us tomorrow. No, tomorrow. Next week. Next week. Right. So I've got a few announcements, and one of them is there's a few announcements really, stuff that I've been up to, and I'll tell you a little bit about one thing, and we've got another stone. I'll do. Right, Richard. Anything you want to tell us this week? Lovely man.
No, nothing from me, except I'm going to be away by 9. I have to be. So if you see me disappear, that's where I've gone.
Oh, early bedtime people. It's supposed to be early bedtime people anyway. So,
I've got my boys coming up after work. So.
Oh, which one? The one in Porth or the one in Barry?
In Barry.
Oh, right. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So just getting rid of that. Good. Okay. So, Garth, anything from you?
Only the the article I sent you, BBC News last week about the fresco, the Roman fresco that was found in London.
Yes, Henry.
And that beautiful fresco in that beautiful fresco. I made actually a video about it online on my YouTube channel. I don't know if you saw that. Do you want me to send you the link?
Yeah.
I went overboard. Did we actually showed that last week as well, didn't we?
No, it only came on the Thursday.
Right. Okay. Oh, okay. What we're gonna do? I really got into that. I did a video about it, and I just cut and spliced a load of videos to get images together. I really got excited about it, and I made a YouTube video. So I'll get that over to you, Goff. But what I will do, I'll send you the YouTube video. I really appreciated that one, which I do with everybody. Henry, anything you want to say? Are you still getting ready? And we can wait.
I sent you a link, but I don't know if you had a chance to look at it.
I still not. You said I gave you the other YouTube, not YouTube. I gave you my other.
Yeah, that didn't work either.
Right. Okay. I'm still getting emails to it. So, anyway, remind us what that was about again.
Basically, it's the dig at Cardiff of a roundhouse and cemetery.
Bronze Age.
Bronze Age.
And that's in Trelai Park.
Oh yeah, I think so.
Which is near the Roman Villa.
Yeah, about 600 meters away.
Good research. And all right, well, we've got enough to keep us going anyway. I just wanted to say that I was doing some research on a recumbent stone, a stone that collapsed in the middle of a field up by Aberdare, right? And I was getting this ready for publication, and then as I was looking at this stone, I then realised not only that I saw some carvings on it initially. I was looking in it more and more, and I thought, oh my god, it's got loads of ring marks on it, and and I got really excited with that in the week. Maybe what I could do is try and get an image of that up to show you. I didn't actually put that on YouTube on it. Oh yeah, I did. Did I? No, I didn't. And then I was out and about on the weekend, and with Michelle, and we were in a place called Pen Bryn in West Wales, and she said, "Oh, there's a standing stone nearby with some carvings on it." So I go to the standing stone, and I'm just looking at it, and I'm studying it. I was like, "Oh my god, they've got something really wrong here." So I went overboard with that, and I'm not publishing that one, strangely enough. I don't know why. And I've been working on the past few days. I've been getting really into the book that I'm working on with Richard, which I've been really getting into. Sort of Richard, I realised that throughout the book we've done two separate entries that are really similar about the ambassadorial house at Buttrell's. So I've had to splice all that in. And I've been working on, what else have I been working on with that? I've been working on trackways, pathways, strange things over the Atlantic Trading Estate. So I've been really getting into that. So I've been getting very excited about that. So loads of things to do, and including the class that we're meant to do tonight as well, which is so what I've done, it's going to be a bit ad hoc, simply because I'm still using this device, which I've got last week's images on, which I put some more images on, which has got some of the other images on, which I want to show you. And then after the break, we'll go on to the other device, which is a little bit more sensible. So let's just see where we can go with this. This is the one that I struggle to use. So we'll see how it goes. And Goff was saying earlier on about all the wonderful places that I've done classes in, including goat sheds and public toilets, cemeteries as well. Oh yeah, there it is. Easy. I did a video of spiders as well. So what we've got, the technology is a little bit sort of off on this. Oh yes, that's the stone, and I sheared a sheep as well. And which one do I want to show you first? Oh, we got the two articles as well: the Bronze Age Park, the reconstruction from last week. But this stone is actually the stone that I saw in a field up in West Wales, and it looks nothing like that when you get to see it, right? Simply because the Corbelengi stone, that's high resolution stone, right? So what they've done is a bit like lidar, the moss and ivy and everything, not moss and all the lichen and stuff has been sort of photographically removed, and you've got this beautiful image. And it's I don't want to say too much about this because I've done a load of stuff online, and it's sort of doing stuff that I don't really need to talk about tonight. But when I saw this stone, the first thing I noticed was obviously the carvings that you can see in front of you, Corbelengi. I got really excited about this, and I thought, it was a really old stone, yeah, and it's dated from the 500s. But then, as I'm looking in the grass, I'm seeing this wording here, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute, that wording there is slightly carved different from the rest of the wording, right? It's a little bit more clearer, and it's a little bit more sharper, and the letters are slightly different, right? And then I was looking at this and thinking, this word Iakit, which means here lies, has probably been added years after the initial inscription of Corbelengi, right? And then I was looking at the notes, and I thought, they're calling this Corbelengi stone, and they're saying that it's about a guy who lived in the 500s. And then I started to think, well, you're presuming it was somebody in the 500s. And then I looked at the word Ordovicius, right? And I did loads of stuff on this, by the way. And the word Ordovicius is the name that was given to the people of West Wales by the Romans, like the Silures they've given to the people of South Wales by the Romans. And then I started to think, I thought, well, if this is a stone dating to the 500s with an inscription on it, and a later inscription of Iakit, which means here lies, Corbelengi, right? Why would Corbelengi be calling himself an Ordovicius when the Ordovicius is a name given to the people of West Wales by the Romans? Right, and I started to think, well, this stone is probably dating from the 300s. The date is wrong, and then, right, there's so much more about this. Then I looked at this and I thought, they're calling this guy Corbelengi, right? And the G, which is there with a line coming down, right? That line is very similar to a line on the right hand side of the screen, and I started to realize that this is Corbelenki, right? Not Corbelengi, right? Because that line there, that line on the supposed G is not a carving, it's natural, right? And then I realized that the Corbelengi, the Corbelenki that makes an eye on the end, right? is probably more likely associated with the Iakit carving, right? Maybe. But overall, I started looking at this and I started thinking there's something not quite right about this. So that was good. I really like doing that. And then what I'd like to do is I'd like to quickly go off on the Tinternet. I'm called it the Tinternet for ages. So what we're going to do, we're going to type in bronze age discovery. It should come up straight away. Discovery in Cardiff is coming up, is it? Park. It probably won't, you know. Oh, there we go. There it is. So an archaeological excavation has uncovered an ancient burial ground underneath popular playing fields in Cardiff. Volunteers at a heritage project excavation said they found a number of pits at Tralee near Kyra Hill Fort, with at least 3 holding a small amount of cremated human remains. So I'm thinking maybe which I think they've probably got a few images here which I can work out from the site. So they're talking about this excavation, and you've obviously got pits there. Some of them look like burials as well. So I'm just going by what I'm seeing on the screen. I haven't really looked at this. And what else do we have? If we go to hang on, go that there. There they are excavating it. And really good weather to be excavating. And there's some more of the features. So a big find, interesting Bronze Age evidence. Not a great distance from the actual Roman villa excavated by John Story. And maybe what we might do is we might go on to the article, just for the sake of argument. Bronze Age burial site found in the park, an archaeological excavation. There we go. Tralee Park near Kyra Hill Fort. The remains, which date back to the Bronze Age, were found next to a roundhouse previously discovered by the project. Oliver Davis. Hugely exciting, dating back to 3,000 years. The fact that the cremations have been buried so close to the roundhouse suggests they may have been laid there to remember cherished family members. It could also mean the site held a ceremonial significance to people at the time. And they're talking about more investigations, and obviously there we go. Interesting there, along with evidence of a timber circle further down, which experts believe date to the earlier Bronze Age, well, the middle part of the Bronze Age, actually. And then they're talking about sort of other finds, and whoever he is, Dan Quealy. And there we go. It's talking about, obviously, lots of evidence: Neolithic, Iron Age, Bronze Age, Roman, medieval. And there we go. You're right. 200 meters away from a Roman villa. So we've got a really interesting landscape that is being uncovered and looked at, and more information there. So that's that one. And also, the one that really gets to me is in London. I know we mentioned this last week. In London, they found these frescoes in 2022 at the Liberty site at Southwark, in London, south bank of the River Thames, in 2022. But the reconstructions here are exquisite. It's a bitty reconstruction. There we go, huge archaeological puzzle, and we'll go on to hang on, let's just see what we've got. Let's just grab an image. So what they've got there, they've reconstructed these bits of the fresco from. They're saying that they've got fresco wall painting evidence, right, from up to 20 rooms from they're saying a Beverly Hills type site. on the south bank of the River Thames, from the Roman era. It's likely as well that the frescoes themselves had come off the wall by around AD 200. So there's also an image of with all of this, individual frescoes somewhere else. There's also an image of a lady with who's looking right sad with sort of her hair as well. And one of the amazing things, I'll tell you a little trick. Oh God, Anne, why is Anne coming up on the screen? Oh, hang on a minute. Anne's buggered things up. Right, hang on a minute. Right, so there they go. There we go. We've got a running video. One of the things that they're saying, oh Christ, hang on. One of the things that they're saying is that the bigger bits of the fresco are at the bottom of the fresco, and the smaller bits are from the top of the fresco, right? And what they're saying is that they're able to work this out because when a fresco starts to decay, when the stuff comes off the top, it falls into loads of different pieces. But when it comes off the bottom of the fresco, it falls into larger pieces. So if something's at the bottom, it's going to be a bigger bit. If something's at the top, it's going to be a smaller bit because it's crashing down to the ground. And this is how they were able to reconstruct the fresco. And I thought it was absolutely brilliant, the way they done that. And I got to be honest with you, this is great looking at this on the screen as they're putting it together. Very repetitive. But again, these are frescoes. And what they did with these excavations in 2022, they're trying to keep everything in sort of perspective. And you can tell that there's a very, very interesting, deep sort of honey yellow there, and sort of a bluey sort of grey as well. So I thought that was absolutely brilliant, and I've done a video of this, and here's some more of it here, some more of the designs, and they've got some reds. This is all from the same site, and what they're doing, they're from big piles of fresco, they're sort of working it all out, and beautiful, absolutely beautiful stuff. Sort of individual little bits of design like this, sort of. Oh yeah, they with all this as well, as they say, when you go and see my video online, I've discussed it a little bit more. They've got various, like, I think you've got various birds there on the bottom there, and you've got various animals. I think the one on the right actually looks a bit like a fox, but it's not. It's more like a little miniature horse on the top bit. And anyway, all of this is wonderful stuff. So let's get back to it. So I don't know what happened then. So we're going to stop the share and we're going to go back into the screen. I'm going to go to where I want to go next. So I don't know what that was, what happened with Anne earlier on, but it sort of buggered things up a little bit. That I'm using the iPhone on this one, and not my proper device that I use for teaching. It's just the way things have fallen. And when I was doing the research the other week, that's because I was on a film set, and it was the only device that I had to get all the images ready for the day following. So wonders of what I do. So here we go. Right. So what I want to do now is I want to go back to where we were last week. Right. And these are the Corbelenghi stone images as well. And I don't know if any of you have ever been to the village in Wiltshire called Corsham, right? Which is absolutely brilliant. But they got rows of houses that date from the 1700s. It was a film set that I was on. Anyway, so where we were last week, what I was trying to do last week, I was putting you through the paces of Hannibal and a little bit of Carthage, and trying to sort of paint Carthage in a light that directly contradicted what Rome was trying to do at the same time. So what I'm trying to say is as we learned last week with Carthage, there's lots of parallels with Carthage and years later Spartacus. And I was saying that the Battle of Cana that we looked at last week, where Hannibal wiped out a Roman army nearly 85,000 strong, right, to his 50,000 strong army. This is Hannibal fighting in Italy. This is 216 BC. Hannibal marched into from Saguntium. He started the Second Punic War, and then it ended. Eventually, the Punic War ended in 201 BC with the Battle of Zama, where Scipio eventually defeated Hannibal, and that's where we're going to go at the end today. A nice bit of blood and gore, right? So what we're talking about is we're gonna think about Hannibal again and try to get into a little bit of the brain of Hannibal. We do mention a little bit of Hannibal next week, but we go on somewhere else. The biggest problem with what I'm doing now is that I know a lot about the subject matter. I've known a lot about every topic that we've looked at, but this is something that I know a lot more. I could just sit here and talk about the Romans and this type of period for ages, right? And you're not going to turn me off. But what's happening is, as I'm presenting this archaeology, there's always things saying, "Oh, can we do a little bit more about the Phoenicians?" Okay, if the Phoenicians link with Britain, right? Good. And then Andy said what he's got images of a Carthaginian site in Spain. So we're going to check them in next week, and they want to know a bit about what happened to Hannibal at the end. And I just thought, okay, Hannibal is in many ways a bit like Napoleon, yeah, and Napoleon disappears from history in 1815 after the Battle of Waterloo. Like Hannibal disappears as well, never to lead an army again. So very similar. And then also, when we were talking, they've just made a big discovery in Italy about a city that allied with Hannibal, and they've actually been excavating it. So I thought that was appropriate. And then somebody said, "Oh, can we look at Roman governmental structure?" And I thought, right, okay. So and when next week I'm supposed to be looking at the Roman writers to try and understand the Roman writer timeline. So when I talk about Strabo, you know who Strabo is and why Strabo's writing about this and that, and Plutarch and Pliny and Tacitus and Julius Caesar and Polybus and Livy and so on, Galena and so on. So that's what we're going to try and do next week, but there's always something that comes up. Anyway, so back to this. So what we've got is at this time, many people are seeing this clash of the titans between Carthage and Hannibal as being akin to what's happening between Wellington and Napoleon. So lots of similarities there, to be honest with you. So that this Second Punic War is a war that doesn't last 2 decades. It's a war from 217 to 201 BC. And but the similarities are very similar to Napoleon's campaigns across Europe, where Hannibal is strutting his stuff, and he's trying to defeat the Romans, and he's trying to create a great empire against this foe, the Romans, right? But Hannibal's empire, Hannibal's Carthaginian world is already on the decline. You know, all empires fall. And then eventually, the Great Battle of the Age, after loads of Hannibal's victories against his great foe, the Romans, what then happens is that Hannibal then falls out of history, but by being defeated by Scipio at the Battle of Zama, which we're going to be doing at the end. So, oh yeah, this coin, I mentioned this last week. People are seeing this great side of Hannibal. He's a legend, like Napoleon would eventually be. Hannibal's a great legend. I'm just trying to make metaphors and sort of comparisons. And so what we've got, Philip V, who's actually a great descendant of Alexander the Great, and so basically of Macedon, the kingdom of Macedon. So basically over 100 years later, one of the kings of Macedon is actually praising Hannibal and issuing coins and pledging his support to Hannibal. And so Hannibal, so there we go. It's it's Hannibal portrayed in 1704 in the Louvre, and a marble statue, and it's sort of giving you an idea of Hannibal, just giving you a little bit of a texture of who the man was, well respected. I did look at that and I thought, I can't work it out. Hang on a minute, what's going on? I did look at that, couldn't work it out. So what I did, I then continued to basically say, look, what we've got is in history, Hannibal goes down as the one remembered, where Scipio isn't. And it's very similar to what happens with the likes of Wellington and Napoleon at the Battle of Waterloo. Most people remember Napoleon, even though Napoleon was lost. Most people remember Hannibal and not Scipio, even though Hannibal lost. There's lots of comparisons there. And as I remember saying last week, one of the great things with these military campaigns, they're used as teaching for West Point Military Academy. And I mentioned the American Civil War. Most of the generals in the American Civil War were taught in these fighting campaigns. And Hannibal's victory at Cana over the Romans was in the top 10 of some of the greatest victories ever fought in history. The history of the world, right? Obviously, you chuck Alexander the Great in there, and you've got to chuck Wellington and Napoleon in there, and maybe Napoleon's Austerlitz. But the fact of the matter is, it's this is the guy that people remember. A bit of a shield there, of Henry II, and there depicting Hannibal's victory at Cana, and obviously the war between France and the Holy Roman Empire in the 1500s. Holy Roman Empire, rather interesting, that. So this is what some of the historians say about Cana, this great victory that we mentioned last week. I remember there were elephants in it, and this is basically talking about bit of a tribute to the likes of Hannibal at Cana in Italy. So few battles of ancient times are more marked by ability than the Battle of Cana. The position was such as to place every advantage on Hannibal's side, and the manner in which the far from perfect Hispanic, Spanish, Gallic, French was advanced in a wedge. So basically, pushing into the ranks of the Romans, was first held there and then withdrawn step by step until it had reached the converse position. So what they're doing, they're really pushing into the enemy to sort of shape it, to sort of wound it, to sort of make the Roman military position move, right? So this is one of the great masterpieces of battle tactics. This is what Napoleon did at the likes of Austerlitz, and obviously coming into the Battle of Marengo as well. So what we've got is that back to Hannibal, the advance at the proper moment of the African infantry, and its wheel right and left upon the flanks of the disordered and crowded Roman legionaries is far beyond praise. The whole battle, from the Carthaginian standpoint, is a consummate piece of art, having no superior, few equal examples in the history of the war. And the Romans are writing this. The Romans are saying, actually, Hannibal is a legend, right? Hannibal is better than any until Scipio comes on. Hannibal is the one, But like all military geniuses, they do come a cropper, Even Wellington come a cropper eventually, because he just goes into politics. He's not a good politician, that type of thing. But so what we've got to think about is moving with this, and a battle of annihilation can be carried out today according to the same plan devised by Hannibal in long forgotten times. So by the end of this, it moves what I'm trying to tell you. Basically, you've got to attack the flanks. The flanks, you've got the center of the enemy army, you've got the left and the right, you attack the left and the right. It's exactly what happened at Sedgemoor with the pretender James against James, and where the flanks of the pretender James were hit, and then obviously Sedgemoor was this great disaster in the latter part of the 1600s. So you hit the flanks, and so basically the wings should not be sought at the advantage point of the front, but rather along the entire depth. So what you do, you tap the left and the right and the middle bit. You try and keep pushing, and the annihilation is completed through an attack against the enemy's rear. So if you've managed to wipe out the enemy's left flank and the enemy's right flank, you go around the back and you kick ass, and the enemy's surrounded. And this was a great battle of annihilation at Cana, and it was a great victory for Hannibal.
Isn't that what happened?
What?
Isn't that what happened in the Middle East as well? 40 years ago, 30 years ago.
Are we
back to Egypt?
are we talking about the 7-day war with Israel?
Yeah.
Basically, when you think about, nothing's really changed in military strategy, and the one thing that the Romans would try not to do is have too many soldiers on the battlefield, right? So I've mentioned this before. When the Romans have got too many soldiers on a battlefield, they usually lose, right? When the Romans have got less troops on the battlefield, they got more maneuverability and they usually win. I was looking at something really recently, and I can't remember the circumstance, but just towards the end of the Second World War on the Western Front, there was a military academy, a German military academy, and all the military officers, they were thinking, well, we're going to be out of a job now, we may as well go and fight. And all the military officers, they managed to get 6,000 men together, and they managed to hold up a huge American army with all its tanks and all the rest of it. And these military these military trainers in the German army, they managed to realize that if the German army had been smaller and more flexible, right, they would have had more of a chance to do more in the Second World War. But it was too late, right? And this is the Roman strategy. If you've got less troops on the field, you're able to move around. You're able to sort of bit of maneuverability. And this is in a way what Napoleon did with the Marmadukes in sort of Egypt, for example. You know, massive enemy there, and you got Napoleon, and you've got more flexibility on the battlefield. It didn't really work at Islandawana with Ketzweo's 20,000 warriors against in excess of nearly 2,000 British soldiers. The figures are usually wrong, by the way. They usually quote 1,600 because they miss out all the levy of local troops. That's different, right? But usually, if you've got a small look, for example, with Alexander the Great, with Darius. Darius has got a massive army. He's got no flexibility. Darius is defeated, and Alexander the Great wins. So. And somebody's saying online, I've never come across a guy online called Karl Karsnak before, and he's called Karl with a K. Karls with a K are cool. And he said a battlefield can become very crowded and chaotic very quickly. Sometimes less is more. I completely go with that. You know, I completely go with that. Less is usually more. So, you know. Anyway, let's crack on. So. Again, we looked at Canaan last week. Again, we're still trying to get the flow of the Carthaginians, and this is, I'm being a bit deceptive today, because what I'm dragging you into is Carthaginian architecture, right? But before we go to Carthaginian architecture, last week I thought, right, what is this thing about the Carthaginians, right? And then. I wanted to. I did a little bit more research, and this is me asking AI, right? So Carthage did trade with Britain primarily for tin, yeah. So that's something good. Which was tin, which was a crucial point in making bronze, as we know. This trade is evidenced by archaeological finds like a Carthaginian coin discovered in England, and historical accounts of Carthaginian trade routes extended to Britain. So what we got to do, we've got to try and prove that. We got to try and think. But there's one thing that we worked out last night before the break. We're a little bit before the break. but one thing I'm going to mention, right, is this, right? This is in absence of evidence, it doesn't mean to say the evidence isn't there. And what I mean by that is really, really simple, right? Because we've got amber coming into the Mediterranean, right? So where's the amber coming from? It's coming from the north, right? It's coming from Königsberg, right? It's coming from the old East Prussia coastline, right? So it's coming from up there in the Baltic. So it's there it's coming from, right? So there's no other way. That's where the amber's coming from. And tin, a large amount of tin. There is a little bit of tin in Italy. There's a little bit of tin in Germany, right? But all the tin that people need, the best quality tin, is obviously coming from Cornwall. So with all this tin, with the absence of evidence, with all this tin and amber, it did come from north of Spain. So therefore, who was bringing it in? It was the Carthaginians, because the Carthaginians held the empire in Spain. So here we go. Yeah, Carl's right. Yeah, Carthage, Phoenicians, who were trading tin from England dating back in antiquity. That's exactly the point we're making, right? So carrying on with this, Carthage's trade network extended in Britain, with evidence suggesting they had established trade routes potentially through Iberia to acquire tin. And one of the things that I was looking into, and this is one thing that this guy Carl online has mentioned, which I was going to mention anyway, is that the Carthaginian army used a great deal of mercenaries. Those mercenaries come from France. They came from Spain. They came from Africa. They would have come from Greece, and they would have come from, there may have been one or two from Britain as well. So what we've got a coin I'm going to quickly show you. There we go. The goddess Tanit, right? A beautiful coin, roughly dating, I think we've got the date about 250 years BC. And so a Carthaginian coin featuring a horse's head on the rear and the goddess Tanit, dating back to the Iron Age, found at Salford, River Avon, near Bristol, indicating a direct connection between the Mediterranean and southwest England. And the coin was so clear and pure in the silts that it is definitely it's definitely something that points out Carthaginian trade, and it's a Carthaginian coin. Now I'm going to mention this from my notes, but I'm going to mention this up in the top here. That Greek historian Herodotus described a silent trade practice, potentially involving Carthaginian merchants, where they would leave goods on the shore and wait for buyers to leave gold in exchange. Mind you, that really wasn't effective against Barry people, because what happened when the Carthaginian boats were off the coast of Barry, right, they would put their goods on the beach. And as they're going back to their boat, the stuff on the beach is nicked, and their boat as well. So it didn't really work with Barry people. But overall, right, when the Carthaginians are trading, this is the type of trade that they did. They left stuff on the beaches, and they'd hope that people would come and collect this stuff and leave goods on the beaches, and then they'd go back out to their boats. But that's exactly the type of thing that Captain Cook did when he was trading in the Pacific, on the Pacific Islands. In the latter part of the 1700s, they would leave goods on the beaches, and then hopefully the natives would come out and collect it, and they would leave gifts. So there you go. But we know what happened to Captain Cook. Carthage sought to control the tin trade, attempting to keep the location of the mines secret and maintaining a monopoly, which was a significant source of their wealth and power. And obviously their direct trade in statues of Lloyd George made of tin. So this is that coin there, right? We had to put Lloyd George in there.
Yeah.
And this is, do you know what, this Carl guy online, right? He thinks so much like me. It's almost as I'm putting comments on there. They were hugging the coast rather than doing lots of open water, blue water sailing. Yeah, you're right. My God.
Well, he's reading the same notes as you.
No, he's not. He's not, because I didn't even say that last night. But anyway,
right.
So the Carthaginian traded. Thanks for that, Carl. All Carls think the same. Carls with a K. All Carls with a C are a bit thick. So the Carthaginians traded their wares in the Mediterranean Sea and further afield to Britain and Mauritania, obviously Africa. during the 6th to the 200s, and the ritual of trade was described, as we know, by the Greek historian Herodotus. Now, when we're talking about Herodotus, Herodotus is writing in the 400s, right? So and it's interesting to say Herodotus is writing in the 400s. So he's writing before this coin's found, before this coin is in the muds and silts, right? So we've got this sort of thing going on, right? And this is apparently translated from the likes of Herodotus. So the Carthaginians unlaid their wares, and don't get too excited, all right? And having disposed them after an orderly fashion along the beach, leave them and return in their ships, raise a great smoke, come down to the shore, and laying out to view so much gold as they think the worth of the wares, withdraw to a distance. And you start to think of Ozymandias then, but we won't do that one. The Carthaginians upon this shore, upon this come ashore and look. If they think the gold enough, they take it and go their way. But if it does not seem to them sufficient, they go aboard ship once more and wait patiently. Then the others approach and add to their gold till the Carthaginians are content. I don't know how much that is based on fact or not, right? But it's rather interesting that. And this great sea trading empire continued until the Romans defeated the Carthaginians. The Romans wanted everything the Carthaginians had. That's basically facts, you know. By Hannibal invading Italy, starting off the Second Punic War, the second Carthaginian War, by him invading Italy was poking the Roman bear, right? The Romans were a third of the scale, 2/3 of the well, 2/3 of the scale of Carthage, but after Italy had been poked, right? It was game over for the Carthaginians, because the Romans would just continually want to revenge. They would want Carthage ended, right? And yes, I'm loving this guy Carl online. He instead of using my own notes, he said, not even the Carthaginians went past the Pillars of Hercules, though they did go south and hug the west coast of Africa, and maybe even rounded the Horn and went up the east coast a bit. Well, we don't know any of that, but what we do know is the Carthaginians sought a passage out through the Pillars of Hercules, hugging along the coast, going all the way up to the Iberian Peninsula coast, which we've got a little bit of information to talk about now. But there you go. We're talking about these coins, and they are absolutely beautiful coins. You could attribute that head possibly to Hannibal and his elephants. The coins speak for themselves. And when you look at coins like this, these were the trading coins, like the doubloons of the period of the 15, 16, 1700s. The doubloon, the silver and gold doubloon of the Spaniards was the standard, was the monetary standard of the planet, like the US dollar is today, right? Like the US dollar is today, the standard back then was the Carthaginian coin. And actually, also in the Mediterranean, it was Islamic coins at the time as the Islamic world conquering much of the Mediterranean, which they're doing now today. So there we go. What we've got there, we've got that Murex shell blue, right? There you go, a Murex shell. That's a Murex shell, and that's not a bag; it's a Murex shell. Carthaginian pottery. We've got this as well. Oh, I went off on a bender last night as well. We're going to go off on a bender now, and I'm just going to ask some of you guys a question in a moment, right? Which is directly linked to this boat, right? Which we'll go on to in a moment. But before we go there, we've got this wonderful thing, wonderful trade routes. The commerciality of looking and thinking about the Phoenician background, and then the Phoenicians develop into all these little cellular people, and obviously the Carthaginians come out of the Phoenicians really well in the 500s, and this is what we're very much talking about, right? But what we do have is looking at this carving, and this actually got me thinking, right? It's probably a little bit later actually, it's carving. But have any of you actually been to Lindos and the Acropolis at Lindos?
No,
No.
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 Henry would have been one of the ones who had gone. But what we did last night is when I basically thought, right, I got to go down the alley. Stone carving, there it is. And I went to Lindos, and basically it was a really odd thing. And there's the carving there. The Lindos stone ship carving refers to a large relief sculpture of a trireme, ancient Greek warship carved into the rock at the base of the Acropolis, Lindos. And this relief is not a separate structure, but rather a carving made directly into the natural rock face, right? Absolutely beautiful thing, yeah, and it dates to roughly this time that we're talking about, maybe about the 180s, 190s, or something like that. And yeah, we've even got the sculpture, Pythokritos. And what we've got is, look at this. I thought this was absolutely beautiful, right? I remember going up the rock. There's steps going up to the Acropolis at the top, and I looked at this and I thought, oh my God, this is carved into the rock. This is over 2,000 years old. And I just thought, it's just got. I just remembered it. I thought I gotta tell them this, and because the Acropolis at the top is actually quite disappointing. They had to deconstruct the Acropolis at the top, and they because in the 1920s, when wonderful Mussolini was funding archaeological projects around the Mediterranean Sea, the Italians were in control of Rhodes, and they come across the Acropolis, and what they did, they reconstructed the Acropolis, which is above this site at Lindos, and what they did, they had iron bars, which was they used in cast concrete, and they were able to reconstruct part of this Greek Roman temple. I think it's Hellenistic temple, actually, just before the Romans, and they reconstructed this thing. It looked great, but as the years went by, the iron bars were exploding inside the concrete, and it was dangerous. They had to deconstruct the whole thing. I didn't see that, but this was something really special. I managed to get into the site free because at the time I was a member of the Institute of Field Archaeology, and they thought I was an eminent archaeologist. It's only twice I've been called an eminent archaeologist, but yeah, there we go. Oh, there we go. Yeah, we went into the Highwayman for my parents' 60th birthday, so I thought I'd mention that. Anyway, so go on that. Oh, hang on, move on. So we go along there. What I want to do is the last bit, which is not that. That's showing the stone. That's doing that. We don't want to call Belendi stone. Hang on a minute. Oh, yes, in the middle of a field, by the way. So there, bingo. So this is that beautiful coin again. Again, giving you this idea of this wonderful world that is Carthage and Hannibal. And a couple of our guys are in a great discussion online, so I'm just going to let them talk. So what we've got, going back to this coin again, going back to this very coin, I know it's a lot to base on one single coin, archaeological evidence, but it's obviously there for a reason, this beautiful coin. So a single Carthaginian coin found near Salford between Bristol and Bath provides evidence of trade links between the Mediterranean and the southwest of England during the Iron Age. And the coin dating back, as I said, roughly, don't know, 230s, 240s, maybe somewhere around there, features a horse's head on one side and the Carthaginian goddess Tanit on the other. Not Tanis, Tanit. This find, along with other evidence of Carthaginian trade routes and goods found in the Mediterranean, suggest that the area may have been part of a trade route connecting the southwest of England with the western Mediterranean. So again, what we're talking about this little bit of a link this trade link, found in the silt of the River Avon, key piece of archaeological evidence. This is something that I went off on last night. The interchange between the word Carthaginian and Iron Age, and you're thinking, hang on a minute, Britain's in the Iron Age, and the Carthaginians are in the classical world, right? They're in the prehistoric. They're not in the prehistoric world, in the historical world. But the Iron Age in Britain is in the prehistoric world, and you're just thinking, how does all of that work? So the point is, what we're talking about today. If you go to Papua New Guinea, there are people in the tropical rainforest of Papua New Guinea that's still in the Stone Age, right? And it's 2025. So you go to Central America, and when you've got the conquistadors, and you've got Cortez, nearly forgot his name, fighting against the Aztecs and Montezuma. The Montezuma and the Aztecs don't have iron; they have bronze and copper, right? Whereas the conquistadors actually have iron, and they've got cannon, and they've got guns. So technically, but they've got writing. The Aztec have got writing in 1521. So they're in the historical period because they've got writing, but technically they're in the Bronze Age because they haven't got iron. So this is what happens. You've got all these different sort of different senses of information, and so yes, Black Patches dog Google is great. So what you've got is, while the coin is the most direct evidence, other sources suggest that Carthage, a major Phoenician power, was involved in Atlantic trade, including the search for tin from Cornwall. And it's that thing, isn't it? Going away from the text, looking at this and thinking, well, you've got all those goods that you've got in Cornwall, that ended up in the Carthaginian world. And I just thought I'd just mention this. This is a really good map. When we talk about the Tanit coin is found associated with the River Avon, right? So that the really interesting thing with that Tanit coin is that for it to have ended up there, trading vessels would have had to have passed the Scilly Isles, and then we know then that those trading vessels would have had to have sailed into the Bristol Channel, choppy waters fairly, ended up at the River Avon, and then made the return journey. But what we've got is other traders before this period circumnavigating Britain, which we're going to be looking at in a couple of weeks. So we've got these circumnavigating sailors sailing around Britain before the Carthaginians, the period of the sort of the Phoenician traders coming into Britain, and that's one of the points that we've got to think about. Lots of Roman historians and Greek historians writing about this period. Herodotus writing in the middle part of the 400s. Sometimes we used to think it was fantasy, and then we're starting to think, well, how did they know that? If how did they know these certain things if there weren't explorers, there weren't traders? How did they get hold of amber? How did they get hold of all this tin if they didn't go there, right? And this is the point. There was this trade. There was this extensive trading palimpsest, which is actually going on. So again, back to this reminder from our AI, and obviously other evidence such as literary sources mention the Carthaginian voyages to Britain and the presence of Punic artifacts in Spain and North Africa supports the idea of trading connections, extensive trading connections. This idea of finding little odd single silly artifacts is something that is a lot bigger than the Carthaginians. When we were doing research into the Roman world ages ago, and this was one of the classes, I remember saying, right, what we're going to do, we're going to try and work out movements of people on the planet, right? And I started to say, why have you got Roman coins in China and in Japan? Why are those coins in China and Japan? How did they actually get there if they hadn't have got there via trade, right? And then you start looking at how is it you've got silk being found in archaeological excavations in London. How did that silk actually get there, right? If it wasn't via trade, right? How do we find silk in tombs in ancient Egypt if it hadn't have actually come via trade from China? So this is all really crucial components. So one of the primary reasons for Carthaginians' interest in Britain, again, we're talking about the tin, this tin interaction with Britain and the importance of tin. And somebody said last night, well, why couldn't the tin have actually come from Italy? Well, it's not, because the Romans would have been controlling that tin. So why isn't a tin didn't come from small reserves in Spain? Well, there's a lot of tin, so this is what we're talking about. So this is a rather interesting question being asked again by somebody else online. This was something that came up that I mentioned earlier on. Is did Iron Age Britons fight in the Carthaginian army? So here we go. I'll read this out in full. So I'm currently down a Wikipedia rabbit hole reading about the Carthaginian Empire, and the introduction to the page for ancient Carthage asserts that the Carthaginian army was composed heavily of foreign mercenaries and auxiliaries. And this is one thing I was saying last week. One of the biggest downfalls of the Carthaginian army was actually using foreigners to fight in their army. Right. This was the downfall of the British Army in the American War of Independence from 1776 onwards. That the British Army used a lot of mercenaries from Germany. Right. And unfortunately, when you use mercenaries, they're not as loyal as you want them to be, because they have a tendency to sign in with the enemy that you're supposed to be fighting. So we can't find any Britons in the Punic army, but it's very likely that they were. So wherever this source came from, where there were Britons, including Celtic Britons, it's very likely. So Punic recruiters toured all corners of the Mediterranean, attracting mercenaries and fugitive slaves. So basically, here's a load of silver, here's a load of gold, right? So is there any evidence that there were Britons fighting in the military of ancient Carthage? I think the biggest problem is with this whole thing is that when Carthage eventually was removed from the map in War 1476 by Rome, right? They destroyed everything. They wiped Carthage off the map. They destroyed their mausoleums. They destroyed their towns and cities. They're wiping out the population, as we mentioned, of Carthage in 700 and start again, wiping out the population of Carthage, which was the end of Carthage in the year 1476. 750,000 people, just wiping them out, just setting the city alight. Humans become human torches in Carthage. 750,000 people died. So they basically wiped out the whole thing, right? Exactly. There's a guy online called Black Patch's Dog tonight, and he mentioned the other week, Carl, why have you got such a romantic view of the Romans? I don't. The Romans were quite brutal. If they were able to wipe out a whole population of people in one single day, right? To scorch the earth of the Punic people of the Carthaginians. That's not a romantic way of looking at Rome. So Herodotus, this is the Herodotus, an image of Herodotus, and this is a wonderful image actually from Wikipedia. So Herodotus, a Roman copy of a Greek bust, and it's dated roughly around AD 100. Herodotus from the 400s, and there you go. This is somebody this is why I don't use the terminologies 4th and 3rd and 5th and 6th century, right? Because Herodotus was technically around in the 5th century, right? If they had put the 400s BC, the author of this work would have been correct. This is why I don't use 4th, 5th and 6th, because there you go. It's even in the text there. So don't use 4th and 5th and 6th, see, it's got it there. It corrects it down below. He was born in 484 BC. Halicarnassus, which is modern day Turkey. 425 BC. Macedon, modern day Greece, northern Greece, and he was a historian. So again, looking at these historians, trying to work out where they are. Carl's saying, did Spartans wear silk? Never. Actually, Carl, I was mentioning that the ancient Egyptians had silk, and we've got evidence of the Romans having silk in Britain. I'm really not sure that the Carthaginians had access to silk, but they probably did somewhere along the line. And this is something else I wanted to mention. Something else when you start to go down this rabbit hole, looking for stuff about the Carthaginians and Herodotus and so on. What you've got to think about is Herodotus. I'll read this out the text here. Herodotus, the Greek historian, did not directly mention Britain in his writings. However, he did discuss Cassiteritis, or Cassiturces, as I mentioned it last night, a group of islands believed to be in the far west of Europe, which some scholars identify with the Scilly Isles and Cornwall, which Plato, 150 odd years later, would refer to another set of islands out from the Pillars of Hercules, being the likes of Atlantis, right? And it said that this Cassiterites, oh, that's right, Cassiterites. Surprised myself I got that right. The Cassiterites, some people believe that this was a complete fiction, right? But why can't it be the Scilly Isles? Why can't it be Cornwall? So Cassiterites is something that Herodotus is mentioning. So these islands were known for their tin production. So why can't it be the Scilly Isles, you know? So, but people keep arguing over and over again. The Cassiterites can't be the Scilly Islands. It's got to be somewhere else. Islands that we've never been able to find. Well, therefore they don't exist. Oh, exactly. That's the point. They never exist. The Cassiterites was something that Herodotus made up. So why can't it actually be in the Scilly Isles? The Carthaginians, on the other hand, were a powerful maritime civilization. That's what they were based on. This is one of the points I made last week. The Carthaginians were actually a naval power. They weren't a land power, right? The Romans were a land power. So when we look about the First Punic War, the Romans were able to capture Carthaginian ships, and they were able to rebuild them, and they were able to use them against the Carthaginians. So again, back to the notes here. So Herodotus and the Cassiterites, writing around 430, refers to the tin islands, the Cassiterites, as a source of tin, while the exact location of the islands is debated. So why can't it be? Some historians say they were likely to be the Scilly Isles and Cornwall, which were known for their tin mines. What's that, Anne?
Just prejudice, you know.
The thing is, this is one thing that I really struggle with, you know. They and basically Carl online, he's mentioning this, so I'll chuck this in there. They were sailors and would have mapped the world by coastlines rather than an all-seeing aerial view like we're used to now. And that's a really, really good point. But anyway, we're going back to Herodotus and the Cassiterites. Carthaginians were a Phoenician initially, as I said, colony back in 814, becoming this major naval and trading power, a bit like the British Empire would become. But then naturally the British Empire only lasted 250 years. The Carthaginians acted as this great power from roughly before the 500s into the 400s, into the 300s, lasted a bit longer than the British Empire. So they were not directly connected to Britain in Herodotus' accounts. But then again, we don't have all of Herodotus' work surviving. We've only got a selection of Herodotus' work surviving. So it does not specifically mention Britain as a place. Britain would not have been known as Britain back then. Nobody would have ever thought of. So Cassiterites are the closest he comes to discussing the region. So some historians and scholars speculate that the tin trade routes from Britain to the Mediterranean might have passed through Carthaginian controlled areas, but this is not explicitly stated by Herodotus. So this is and reading a bit of Herodotus. So from Herodotus, one of his work in book 3, chapter 115, from one of the books that survived. These then are the most distant lands in Asia and Libya, but concerning those in Europe that are the farthest away towards evening, I cannot speak with assurance, but I do not believe that there is a river called by foreigners Eridadus issuing into the northern sea. So we're talking about probably the Pillars of Hercules, where our amber is said to come from. So he's talking beyond that. And amber, so he's talking about amber, where our amber is said to come from. Nor do I have any knowledge of the tin islands where our tin is brought from. So the point is, right, tin is being mentioned, amber's being mentioned by Herodotus. Where is this coming from, if not trading sailors that are associated with the Phoenicians and eventually the Carthaginians? And people keep arguing and say, "Oh, it can't be this, it can't be that." This is one of the things when this is more of a local thing, right? This is more of a local thing. Naturally, we're doing the Romans now, and we'd be studying the Romans. When the Glamorgan the Great Archaeological Trust originally found remains of Roman remains in Cowbridge, proper Roman remains in Cowbridge, they found a shop front first, and then they found a Roman lion as the years went by. They found a bathhouse under Arthur John's car park. They found bits of Roman wall, loads of bits of Roman pottery, and the historians would say, but it's still not the elusive bovium that we've been trying to find for the hundreds and hundreds of years. And it's like Cowbridge, bovine, bovium. And they're thinking, but it can't be. So they're still trying to place bovium as somewhere else. When you've got all the Roman remains in Cowbridge to prove that it's bovium or bovium. But you've still got some historians arguing it's somewhere else. You can't win some days, you can't. So anyway, back to this, and we're talking about the Cassiterides again, and Herodotus's histories. This is a translation from the 900s. The Cassiterides, the tin place, an ancient geographical name used to refer to a group of islands whose precise location is unknown or may be fictitious, but which was believed to be situated somewhere near the west coast of Europe. And there it is, Strabo. Map of Europe according to Strabo, who believed that Cassiterides to be in the Atlantic off the coast of Lusitania, but before the British Isles. So the whole thing is that it's showing the Cassiterides here, and then other historians are saying it actually didn't really exist. Britannia, but that could be referring to Brittany, right? I could argue that. There you go. And island there. So the problem is with all of this, right, is that people do go off and they do argue and they do have these conversations, trying to reinvent things and try to understand. And we're going to see. Oh God, we got still a few things left before we have a little bit of a break. And I've got to be very wary that some of you want to leave at 9 o'clock. So I'm just mentioning for those online. There's this Carl probably wanting to sort of join us. Carl, if you want to join us, you can press the join tab, and it's sort of £1.99 a month, and go for it on YouTube. Anyway, I thought I'd mention that. But anyway, so modern writers have made many attempts to identify them, Cassiterides, small islands off the north coast of the Iberian Peninsula, the headlands of the same coast, the Isles of Scilly, Cornwall, and the British Isles, the Cassiterides, but none suit the conditions. I don't know why people go on about this. Neither the Iberian Islands nor the Isles of Scilly contain tin, at least in significant quantities. They used to contain a lot of tin on the Scilly Islands until it was mainly mined out. So there we go. You're thinking wrongly. It seems most probable, therefore, that the name Cassiterides represents the first vague knowledge of the Greeks that tin was found overseas, somewhere in off. So it may have been referring to Great Britain after all. And there's a little bit of a map showing possibly these weird islands off the northern coast of Spain, the Iberian Peninsula, Portugal. Again, I just wanted to put the Cassiterides in there so you know a little bit more about the search for lands outside the Mediterranean and the gates of Hercules. And obviously, we will be looking at the circumnavigating explorers who are coming out from the gates of Hercules and Mediterranean in a future lecture. Now, as I was doing my research and looking in my books, I was looking for Carthaginian architecture, and it's very difficult to find. In fact, it's so difficult to find that the Romans demolished most of it. However, we had the dirty old git on last night on YouTube, and when I was talking about this tower, he said this is the same place as the arch of one of the arches of Septimus Severus, and I thought, nah. And he was bloody right. And I thought, oh my God, he does have sensible things. And I just started to think, I thought, what a beautiful monument. And this is actually the only really tall, upstanding monument that survives from the Carthaginian world. The rest was wiped out by the Romans.
So it looks a bit Chinese.
It's beautiful. And we'll be looking at this after the break. It's absolutely a beautiful image.
You know, like
beauty, yes,
an influence there.
Exactly. You've got like, and also they're referring to what you've got like a pyramid on the top, right? And it's like it's absolutely beautiful. This you know, it's in 3 tiers, and Anne, this is 21 meters tall. This okay, we can just chuck this in here just quickly a little bit. Just chuck this in here, and they're talking about Afghanistan online. There we go, tin. Basically, this reminds me of an image of the lighthouse of Alexandria, right?
Oh,
where the lighthouse of Alexandria would have little sort of thing jutting out the side with light, and maybe on the top would be flat, and there'd be a big sort of fire on the top or whatever, right? But the Carthaginians, remember, are part of a much wider world, right? And so what we've got, and that's where the tower is near, it's obviously near Carthage, right? And it's near another city which did sort of survive associated with the Carthaginians, which is basically on that headland, which we're going to actually do after the break. So again, all this effort talking about the Carthaginians, and obviously trying to work out where the Romans are thinking, how they're thinking about conquest, right? And this is the point. This is the key point, that if you stand up against the Romans, you're finished. If you don't stand up against the Romans, you survive, and that's one of the big points. When you get lots of archaeologists and historians arguing that the Silures resisted the Romans, and there's all this fighting going on in Wales, and all this absolute nonsense on Holyhead and Druids and things that go bump in the night, it is absolute nonsense, because if they did really resist the Romans in the way that later historians have said, then there'd be no Britons left, because the Romans would have wiped them out, because that's exactly what they did with the Carthaginians. It would have been scorched earth. If the Romans had come across an Iron Age Britain and all 5,000 hill forts were resisting against them, the Romans would have wiped out everybody in Britain, and that's exactly what they did with the Carthaginians. And that is my point, as one of the key points why we're doing this tonight, to see how the Romans think. And it's exactly. Black Patch's dog is back on. Tin was traded to Europe long before the Romans came here. And Black Patch's dog, you are completely correct. It's not about the Roman world. It's about the Bronze Age world. It's about everything that happened before Rome. Rome is not the be-all and end-all. And that's exactly why we're doing the Carthaginians. This is why we're stating this, right? And we're going to look at all that stuff well before Rome, where we're talking about the circumnavigation of Rome. And then we could be thinking about where the Romans get some of their ideas of Britain from. Why Julius Caesar is saying certain things about Britain, because he's stolen this information from previous sailors and previous navigators around Britain. And there's my spiders in the grass, and there is Mauer, and there she has been sheared.
Oh.
So basically, I sheared my mower. I love her to bits, and we got a complete fleece offer. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a break now, right? I'm going to change devices in the break, right? So hopefully, I'm not going to screw things up.
You should keep it warm. It's not that warm at the moment.
Well, Mauer's quite chunky, Anne. Mauer's a chunky cheap. Chunky cheap, chunky
All
cheap.
right.
Right.
Make
So
a nice lamb dinner.
a nice lamb dinner. Thanks, though. Oh, and this is going to disgust you, right? Well, whilst I'm teaching down here, before I drive back to Barry tonight, I didn't have any food here really, so I went through the ration pack food that we've got here. So I found a ration pack that was issued in 2018, and it went out of date in 2022. I put that in a pan, boiled it. It was perfect. 3 years out of date.
What is it? Sort of glutinous stuff, or?
Oh yeah, no, it's just military grade ration packs. I've got ration packs going back to 2015, which I haven't tried yet. Right, we're gonna have a break now.
All right.
It's 8:26. Those of you online, a golden fleece too. Yeah, exactly. Oh, and by the way, let's a bit thing about the golden fleece. The legend of the golden fleece came that they used to use fleeces to actually pan for gold in rivers. So basically, you've got they put a reef fleece in a river, and the gold would get trapped in the fleece. They would dry out the fleece, burn the fleece, and then you'd have golden fleece.
Wow.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
In Ireland, well, they got a bit cocky, but that's the Irish view. Henry, anything you want to say?
Just one thing, you got tin mines in Ireland as well, supplying that part of the world as well.
Exactly. We mentioned the Irish once tonight. We mentioned them twice. Exactly, the Irish. Can I say one thing for my friend Black Patches Dog, who's followed me on the internet for a long time, right? So when we're at the reason why we're doing this approach to looking at Roman Britain is to try to work out how Roman era Britain is actually very much a native British Britain. So we're looking at all these factors to try and play into that, and then we'll understand what we're doing about when we actually start looking at all the nitty gritty in Roman era Britain. And also I've got, oh, by the way, this is something really will float your boat, right? There's a stretch, a 1 mile stretch, one of the only stretches of Roman era stone, Roman built road in Britain, in Yorkshire, right? It is actually a Roman, but then after they've researched it, it's turned out it's a native British road with some Roman cobbles dumped on top of it. So the Romans can't take all the glory. So I said to Judith, can you just go down the road and take some photographs of this? She said, yeah. And then she contacted me. She said, my husband's got a drone. So we're going to get some drone footage, right? And then what we're going to do, we're going to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this drone footage with the Roman road footage and compare it with the Roman road at the Julius Maritime in Britain, in the Vale of Glamorgan near Cowbridge. So that's what we're going to go. That's what we're going to do. Yeah, I know you don't agree with everything I say, Black Patches Dog, but I'm really pleased that you're on tonight. Goff, anything you want to say?
No, nothing to add to that. Thank you. Very good.
We'll have a 10-minute. Well, we'll have about. We can't have a long break because of Dickie, but enough time to feed the sheep.
Sorry, you don't mind.
Anne, anything you want to say?
You don't mind to do. Oh, I keep thinking of guerrilla warfare. I just wondered if that's the tactics that the Romans used, or the Carthaginians,
well, basically,
or the
everybody's used guerrilla tactics in warfare, and in fact, guerrilla fighting is probably some of the most effective tactics.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
They had to bring them into one of the wars. I can't remember now.
Exactly. Right. Okay, Richard, anything you want to say? Because we want to break.
No, nothing for me.
Okay, 10-minute break. everybody keep talking online. Everybody online, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm going to change my device over now anyway. And anyone who wants to join online, £1.99 a month on YouTube,
We
press
keep
the
missing.
join
All
button.
right then.
Right, what we're going to do is going to take a break now. So 10-minute break. It's now 8:30. Thank you.
All right. Oh, I couldn't get online. Hello. I couldn't get online earlier because I forgot my password. I phoned up Pat and she was on last night. She did Tuesday night.
Yeah, that's right. Carl said.
Yeah. So there's getting less
What did I
women
just say? Hey, what?
I phoned you. I couldn't.
Yeah, you phoned us whilst we were doing the presentation.
I know.
You ruined my life. You ruined Richard's life. You buggered up Goff.
I'm leaving.
Yeah,
No.
you can't leave, Anne.
I can.
You can't. You don't want to take things personally. Goff doesn't take things personally. Me and Goff, me and Goff are like blood brothers. So
Well,
yeah.
Henry's
Anyway,
here,
right.
but he's not here, is he?
Who? Goff? Goff's there.
Henry.
Henry's there.
No, he's not.
Henry is there.
I was
Right.
going to say, did you see that piece on Facebook about the oldest pub in Ireland?
What? It was.
It's called Sean's Bar in Athlone, and my grandfather lived next door to it.
Yeah.
Oh, well, did you ever get a
We
drink
went,
in
we
there?
went, we were looking for, evidence of my grandfather, and we found where he used to live. He brought his family up just within the shadow of Sean's Bar, the oldest pub in the world, he said.
Yeah, I go to that gay bar with Richard in Cardiff every week. Oh, but by the way, Henry said to mention the ship carved on Lindos is the work of Pythocritus. I did actually mention that, but I thought I'd just mention that again, just because he only likes to get a bit more into this. So we're back to the other bit of doodah, and we're going to crack on. There's nothing wrong with a bit of crack.
No.
Oh God, what have I just said?
Well, the crack is Irish.
And leave it. Right, okay.
Sorry, we have to start talking about Germany one day.
What? Why? I do mention Germany every week.
Oh yeah, but the nice things about it.
Yeah, by the way, that's me saving jellyfish on the beach.
Oh.
I don't like to see things dying. It turned out that they were all Portuguese man of war, and the people swimming further up the coast. Some of them got stung, and I had to bring out the air ambulance. But I didn't want anyone to die.
Oh.
Right. So anyway, this.
So you
I
put them
was
back
looking
in the
at
water, and then they'll swim and sting someone else.
yeah. Right. Okay. So so what I was out there doing was to try to understand this world of the Carthaginians, and the problem is we don't have much in the way of substantial archaeological remains from the Carthaginian world, but this is one of their cities, right? Now, this is actually a site known as Caer-Coan, and Caer-Coan itself is a site that has necropolises, has it's basically it was a city of traders, right? And this was a big trading post for the Carthaginians. But what saved this site? Because this would be an area where the Romans would have come over, you know, to invade the likes of the Carthaginian world. But Caer-Coan is a site that was strangely abandoned whilst the Carthaginians were at the height of their kingdom in about 250 years BC. And we don't know why they abandoned the city, but they did. So the one thing about this is it's a typical trader Carthaginian town. And we believe the population was probably no more than about 1,200 people. But what we've got there is evidence of temples, evidence of normal houses, evidence of storage buildings. You can see that from the plan, it's quite an interesting plan. It's like a curved plan with all the sort of docking areas for all their vessels. So it's distinctively Carthaginian. But again, it was abandoned in 250 years BC, and being abandoned in 250 years BC means that there's not going to be a Roman destructive layer. It's not going to be expunged from the earth by the Romans. It was already abandoned by the Carthaginians. It just fell into decay and it was just left. So that means that it's just a Carthaginian city, a town. It's just a Carthaginian port. And this is so unique. The site is a World Heritage UNESCO protected site, because it's just Carthaginian. That's all there is. There's obviously little remains of temples and stuff, but obviously in later years, some of the material would have been taken away to build other things. But there's nothing else built here, which makes it so unique and so amazing. So they've excavated lots of the buildings, and it's sort of that. And the other thing as well is UNESCO are quite worried about this site because of the water level rising. But obviously there's nothing they can do about that. But what we've got is the typical way they're building, really nice sort of block work, and with sort of core rubbling inside the middle of the wall, and obviously inside as well. So you've got the exterior, really finely dressed blocks, and the interior. We know that the interiors of the buildings would have actually been rendered with clay. A bit more like a stucco, and that would have been painted with the reds and the yellows, so that had been painted. We know that they got lots of these have got beaten clay floors, which is quite effective in those types of climbs. If you've got a beaten clay floor, it's not going to be cold. It's more like as you walk on it barefooted, it's going to be more adaptable. And what you've got in the wall furniture, you've got these big blocks to assist the wall furniture for the doorways and so on. And again, the Caer-Coan is where we are, not too far away from Carthage. But there's an necropolis there as well, which actually reminded me. Necropolis, burial ground, mausoleums underground. This reminded me of some of the burial sites, which I'm sure that Henry's visited on Cyprus. I've visited many of these types of sites on Cyprus. So it's very similar to like the Hellenistic burial chambers that you'll find on Cyprus, which are dated to, the 150s, 160s, 170s years BC. So this is obviously dated to 250 years BC. So we're getting an idea of their burial traditions and burial customs before this whole world starts to collapse 100 years later. So again, giving you an idea of some of these buildings. And what we do have is something that was very familiar to me, because what they've done, you've got some of the beaten clay floors, and what you've got clay rendered walls, and you've got some of the clay rendered walls still in situ there, but you've also got reconstruction work on site. And this is something that I found in when we were working in Spain, for example. When we were working in Spain, we were working at the site at Santa Maria. It was actually a Roman site, a later Visigoth site. And what we were doing is that as we were excavating in Santa Maria near Villaggio di Salvanes, north east of the likes of Madrid, when we were excavating, one of the conservators was reconstructed whilst we were there. As we were excavating, they'd reconstruct it. So we'd excavate, record, they reconstruct it. This is what they've done with this site as well. So areas where they've got lots of evidence that they know what's going on. So this is like a walled, clay rendered sort of bath suit of some description. And you can see all these buildings, some of these walls, 2 meters tall still, and probably flat roofs as well. Very sort of Egyptian sort of pushing out, the flat roof type stuff, which you get in the Middle East anyway still. And again, what you've got, lots of this sort of clay, sort of ochre rendering. You've got loads of evidence of this, and it's all still in situ. This wouldn't happen in Britain if you've got when you find this sort of rendering on walls from sort of Roman period sites, Roman era sites in Britain. If you leave that out in the open too long, then it's just going to be washed off. The archaeologists did that at Caerwent, and unfortunately, all the frescoes at Caerwent, which were left on the walls after a year, were just washed off by the rain, and that was lost forever. But with this type of site, it's not, because the conditions, very little rain, and you're able to leave the site in this state. So it's really, you can get an idea of the Carthaginian town. It's great. So you've got like an area, sort of a peristyle type thing, where you've got slightly sheltered, slightly undercover with these columns. Different type of colonnading. You don't get the carved drum bases here, which are sort of a specific Doric Ionic style carving, right? But what you do get, you've got the individual sort of drums here with a flat bass, and another drum above that supporting a roof. And so this is a style that we got. And what we do find with this type of site is there's loads of these types of features here, where they might have stored water, because obviously it's hot there, and obviously what we've got is the sense of the civilization, very civilized people. These were direct competitors to the Roman world. It's sort of like a temple type site, this one. And again, these types of features which they're showing on site. Just one thing about the conservation side of things, when we look at the comparison of modern conservation compared to older conservation, when we look at Arthur Evans's excavations at Knossos in Crete, when he's reconstructed Knossos in Crete by 1921, he's actually using metal rods, cast concrete. So now what we're seeing in the main Temple of the Dolphins, I think that's right, at Knossos, some of that stuff is actually starting to decay, and the metal is actually rupturing, as I was describing with the Acropolis at Lindos with the Italians. The British are doing it in Crete, but they're not doing it here. They're trying to use as traditional techniques as much as they can to actually give you an impression of this Carthaginian world. And again, what we've got nice little stoops there for storing water, probably more of a bath suite here, buildings. This is so unique because we don't have this. There's nothing really else like this anywhere, because the Romans have wiped it out. However, when I say this is the greatest Carthaginian site in the world ever, right? I was reminded that Andy said. He said he's got photographs of remains of a Carthaginian site in Spain, not as well preserved as this, but he's going to get them over to me, and hopefully I'll be able to show you that as well next week, just to give you a little bit more of a Carthaginian vein, a little bit more of a Carthaginian understanding about what's going on. So again, big city site, and again, you can appreciate this for what it is, and obviously the the door furniture there, where you've got these big stone for the door, really well laid out. And again, this is like, this takes us back to something like oh God, not Godepi Tepe, the other place, in God, it's lost me, Turkey, where we've got a Neolithic little estate from 9,000 years ago. Anyway, you've got these tight streets, and you've got these flat roofs. This is what this reminds me of. So what you've got these sort of, everything's flat and it's sort of really shaded and really nice. So this is what we've got going with, this sort of bit of inspiration with Çatalhöyük. That's what I was thinking of in Turkey, where you've got the flat roofs and stuff going from the Neolithic period, 10,000 years ago. This is obviously not that period. This is 250 years BC. But obviously get the idea of the flat roofs and sort of the rooms, and probably being able to move around the space of the roofs as well, in amongst all of this sort of intertangle of the buildings as well. So we're going to be going on to the Battle of Zama soon, and I think Richard will be leaving us soon. But this absolutely beautiful building, and actually the Dodgy Git is actually on now. He was actually with us last night, right? And the mausoleum of Aduga, and when I was mentioning the mausoleum of Duga, and this is, oh, hang on a minute. There is basically where Duga is, right? After the class last night, I basically thought, right, okay, this guy online that joins us every week, called the Dodgy Git, who fancies Anne, right? He basically said this is where there's an arch that Septimus Severus built, and I just thought, is he right or is he right? I looked up, he's dead on, he's smack on. So I really appreciated that. So Duga, not in the heart of Tunisia, really not far away from the Battle of Zama, really not far away from Carthage either. But however, when we think about this is it, as far as the best of the best goes, for Carthaginian architecture. So it's basically, it was finally restored and loved up in by 1910 by the French, and the Duga site, this mausoleum and the area with all the other monuments, are a World Heritage Site, as in 2012, and this itself is extremely fine, right? So what we've got, the sad thing about, the sad story with this monument is what happened to it in the 1800s. It's said that in the 1800s, probably early into the 1600s actually, when Westerners were going to this site, they were nicking bits of the monument, some of the carving, some of the carved writing off, they were nicking bits of the monument, right? So by the time 1842 came and Thomas Reed, the British consul, went to the site, he reported that the site was seriously damaged, and the monument in the process of removing the royal inscriptions which decorated it, and somebody was doing that whilst he was there, and it was just like thinking, oh my God, we've got to do something like to protect this site, and only real protection happened in 1910. So it's actually 21 meters high, and which you can't tell it from there. It looks like 10 meters high, but it's 21 meters tall. It's a really tall mausoleum. It stands out in the landscape. And what you've got these three layers, these three tiers, that sort of give me the idea of sort of something like Alexandria. And yeah, this is absolutely fine, and it basically shows off the Carthaginian world. We've been talking about the Carthaginian world. You got the sense of the sepulchre, which is the burial place, where the colonnades are in sort of the second tier there. And what you've got is it's in there as well. You can see what they've done with the reconstruction of griffins and so on, and you've got these these sort of the arrangement of colonnades there in the sepulchre area, so extremely fine, extremely beautiful. And again, there's another image of it, and these little steps going up to it. They it's lucky that they saved this site, and I would, if you want to look at more about this, because it's now 9:02 and you want to get a little bit more information, because we've got to go on to Zama now, the Battle of Zama, the end of Hannibal, that leads us into next week. Mausoleum of Doga, Dougga. Look it up and do a little bit of research on it. So back to this as well. 218. The likes of Hannibal have decided in 217 to invade from Rich has just left us, which didn't say goodbye. So basically what happened is Hannibal, he goes in via Carthaginian territory in Spain, and he marches all the way over the Pyrenees, all the way over the Alps into Italy, right? And obviously the great victory at Cana. But this would then lead by 2002, 202 BC, right? 16 years later, on the end of the Second Punic War in 201 BC, 17-year campaign. This was at Zama, and there is Zama. So you don't have the site that we just looked at, Doga, is sort of north, north easterly of Zama, sort of southwesterly of Carthage. And so what we're really talking about, and what we're really understanding is the Romans wanted vengeance for Hannibal defeating them all the time. Well, Hannibal didn't win every single battle, nor did Napoleon. But the rate of success that the likes of our friend, the likes of success that Hannibal had, could match Napoleon. So Napoleon commanded about 40 battles, won 32, and Hannibal's probably similar. And the range of their campaigning is in similar timescale. But again, Napoleon's reign would come to an end, and so would the likes of Hannibal. So this is basically it. So some historians say that Hannibal's army was similar size to the Romans. Others say that the Romans were outnumbered by Hannibal. Publius Cornelius Scipio, who becomes Scipio Africanus because of his victory over Hannibal. Facts and figures there. Hannibal had elephants, which were really ineffective at this point. Really ineffective. Is 80 elephants. A load of them were captured by the Romans by the end of the battle, alongside 20,000. Basically, half of Hannibal's army was captured and half of them killed. So that leaves basically no one left. And the Romans losing 150 killed. However, they had a massive amount of casualties. And in fact, the Romans under Scipio nearly lost this battle. Now, some sources tell us that there it is. It's really basically near Doga. Some historians say that if Hannibal had won the Battle of Zama, Scipio would have come back with another army and eventually defeated the likes of Hannibal. And there's a big comparison here. If Wellington hadn't defeated Napoleon at Waterloo, and it was a close run thing. Wellington said Waterloo was a close run thing in 1815. If Napoleon had defeated Wellington at Waterloo, Wellington would have been back with another army, and he would have that time defeated Napoleon. So there's lots of similarities here. There are lots of similarities. Leave this year. So the Battle of Zama, victory of the Romans led by Scipio Africanus the Elder. He was given the name Africanus, victor of Africa, by the Roman Senate. And some people were asking last week, how did this all work? Was this an empire? No. Was it a republic? Yes, it was. It wasn't a kingdom, right? It was run by senators and representatives. and consuls. So the last and decisive battle of the Second Punic War, it effectively ended both Hannibal's command of Carthaginian forces and also Carthage's chances to significantly oppose Rome. After this, Carthage was finished. There was a lingering death for about 60 years, and then Carthage would eventually be captured by the Romans in 146 in the third and last Punic War. So what we've got is, I know we've got Roman historians like Livy writing about Zama, but Livy was quite correct when Livy was writing about Cana. Livy was saying the Romans were wiped out with Cana. Then Livy's saying, this Roman historian said, actually, the Carthaginians were wiped out at Zama. So there was no bias there. But what we do, we've got the location identified by a Roman historian called Nepos. Again, we need to look at these Roman historians 150 years later. So the one thing is that Carthage, the Carthaginian army, part of the Carthaginian army was still in Italy, right? Because it had lots of allies in Italy. Capua, and we look at this site that had an ally in Italy that they've archaeologically excavated recently. So we'll look at that next week, right? So that's what we've got to do next week. So what we're seeing here, and what we're understanding, and obviously this is the Roman helmet of the time. You notice this Roman helmet is really different from the Roman helmets that you see in the likes of Gladiator, right? Or
Yeah.
Roman helmets that you see in, the Cloak, or any of these sort of Hollywood things, Hugh de Ben-Hur, really different, right? These are different helmets, different uniform. They had side sort of cheeks, but that thing at the back is to protect from short sword blades, looking very different from later Roman helmets and uniforms. So what we're talking about is this battle is barely 20 miles away from Carthage, and this whole thing is going to see Hannibal do his best, but he didn't win the battle. So what happened is that Hannibal, hearing, now this is really interesting, we'll go on to this, in Hannibal hearing that the likes of, so we got the map there, Hannibal hearing, so he's still in Italy, Hannibal hearing that Scipio, the Roman general, has landed and has marched all the way through to Carthage, right? Hannibal panics. He leaves Italy with 12,000 veterans, right? And his brother Mago, who dies at sea, right? And then he's got to gather another army to fight at Zama against Scipio, right? There's a parallel to this, and I will tell you that parallel, right? So Hannibal had extended his reach. He should have gone straight back to Carthage and sort of kept control of Carthage with his army, and it would have been able to stop Scipio, but obviously something would have happened eventually anyway. So there's a parallel with this in 1746. So what happens? The Jacobite rebellion's going well in 1745, and Bonnie Prince Charlie starts to march on London, right? Burns Carlisle, goes through to York, and then he's told that there's a government army. This is Bonnie Prince Charlie. He's told the government army is leaving France and he's going to land in Scotland, right? So Bonnie Prince Charlie turns around and heads towards Scotland whilst the government army's landing in Scotland, right? So he's got to fight on Scottish ground, and his men are exhausted, right? He doesn't have a full contingent. He fights at Culloden, and Bonnie Prince Charlie loses, right? And that's the end of the campaign. That's exactly the same what's happening with Hannibal. Hannibal, his army's exhausted, lands, gathers a little army together, fights at Zama. It's not as well trained. It's not as well organized, right? And that's exactly what happened to Bonnie Prince Charlie at the Battle of Culloden, right? After his victories against the other government armies. So you can see parallels in history, right?
That's
Very
Harold.
big parallels in history. There's another parallel in history as well. When we look at the 14th of October 1066, the Battle of Hastings. After the likes of Harold victorious at Stamford Bridge, he's then told that there's an army that William's army is going to be landing on the south coast. So we've got to march all the way south, right, to fight William, right, and his army's absolutely exhausted after this great victory at Stamford Bridge. There you go. It's exactly the same. You go too far away from your population centre and your support.
Yeah.
You're going to be bitten on the arse. And with those three things, it's three exact same things that have actually happened in history. So this is why all this history stuff is linked. You know, things repeat. Things do repeat, right? So basically, what we've got is we've got this is what we're seeing. So Scipio is landing and obviously causing absolute havoc. The likes of Hannibal's got to come back. This great battle at the Zama. This is what's going to happen, and there we've got a river marked in there. So we mentioned the river. So what the bit about the thing, the river towards Carthage, it leads to Carthage, right? So so there's Carthage, you know. So we've got Carthage there, the river that leads to Carthage, you know. Zama, this is the place of battle. This is the battle of the two great generals. So Scipio's army was reinforced by people that didn't support Hannibal. Hannibal had left his allies back in Italy, was fighting on his home soil. He had to quickly get an army together and naturally wasn't able to take much cavalry from Italy. So he had 6,000 cavalry. He was able to gather 80 elephants together, but the Romans had 8,000 cavalry, which made the difference. So Hannibal could not transport the majority of his horses from Italy, and he was forced to slaughter a number of his horses, stopping them falling into Roman hands. So it's, you know, he's not in a good place. So Hannibal arrived too late to affect the place that he wanted to fight Scipio. Scipio then commanded the battlefield. Scipio chose the place of fighting. Exactly the same thing when William fought Harold. Even though Harold was up on the hill, right, William had actually chosen the battlefield, right? William had already got there. He knew where he was going to fight Harold. Force Harold to be on a hill, which is unusual, but William knew what he was doing. So the Carthaginian army lacked experience. It only had 12,000 experienced men, and the rest were gathered together by field hands and all the rest of it. Against a fully trained, fully invigorated Roman army, which was up to, I know it said earlier on, the Roman army was like 30,000 strong, more like 40,000. This is what one of the Roman historians tell us. Now, this is really important. This is really important. This is Scipio. It's a marble bust of Scipio. And this is a French bust of Hannibal. This is the one that we saw earlier on from 1704, this bigger body bust, right? So what we've got, right, we're gonna do these little charts. We're gonna read out what this says, give you some facts and figures, then we'll talk a little bit more about the battle. Polybus states that 20,000 Carthaginians were killed and as many again taken prisoner, which accounts for the entire Carthaginian army. He gives Roman losses as 1,500. This is 5% or more of their total force. Another writer saying that Goldsworthy considers this this rate a substantial loss for a victorious army, testimony to the hard fighting, and that the battle as a whole was a slogging match. So it was probably a lot more than 1,500. Lots of Roman soldiers injured, right? But then again, the Romans won The number of wounded is not known, although the ancient sources referred to many wounded Roman soldiers being carried to the rear during the pause before the final engagement. At least 11 Carthaginian elephants survived the battle to be captured by the Romans. The one thing to be said about all of this is that it's a civil battle. It's they have a little bit of a break in the middle of the battle and deal with their wounded. It's a civil battle, and the reason why I'm saying a civil battle, right, is Hannibal and Scipio had a meeting, right, and the meeting basically is before all this carnage. Before the battle, Hannibal and Scipio met personally, possibly because Hannibal, perceiving that battle conditions did not favor him, hoped to negotiate a generous settlement. Scipio may have been curious to meet Hannibal. This was like, Wellington did meet Napoleon on a ship just before Napoleon went into captivity, right? But Napoleon did not meet Wellington at the Battle of Waterloo. Scipio and Hannibal met at the Battle of Zama. Scipio refused the proposed terms, stating that Carthage had broken the truce and would have to face the consequences. This is a long war, This is a bit like, Anne, you wanted me to mention the Second World War, but this is like Himmler in April 1945, going to the Allies saying, look, work with us against the Russians. I'll give you all our scientific technology and all the information. And the Allies going, you must be mad, mate. You've lost the war. This is what Scipio was saying to Hannibal, right? You screwed this up. And Livy said that Hannibal told Scipio, what I was years ago at Trasimene and Cana, you are today. Trasimene, Hannibal wiped out the Roman one consular army. Hannibal wiped out this combined consular army at Cana, right? Hannibal has been fighting non-stop for 15 years, right? He wasn't as good as he was 15 years earlier. And guess who said the same of Napoleon? They said exactly the same of Napoleon. They said, Napoleon, they said about Napoleon at Waterloo. Obviously Napoleon had been fighting a little bit longer than 15 years, but actually, to be honest with you, it's probably about the same time, because Hannibal entered command of this campaign in 218 all the way through to 202, so that's 16 years. Napoleon is basically is the main consul of the army, the French army, 16 years before Waterloo, in 1799. The parallels of Napoleon and the likes of this guy Hannibal are uncanny. They really, really are. And again, this would be Hannibal's last battle, and Waterloo would be Napoleon's last battle. It's just so weird. And basically, Hannibal basically went into obscurity, really, and he was allowed to retire. And actually, Napoleon went into obscurity, and he was allowed to retire. He wasn't hung or anything. He was a bit of a captive, wasn't he, Napoleon, on an island, St. Helena. So Scipio said to have replied with a message for Carthage. Overall, prepare to fight, because evidently you have found peace intolerable. The next day was set for battle. So what we've got the Roman army here, yeah. So what's happening is the elephants are all over the place. The elephants charge into the Roman ranks, right? And they're so frightened and upset that they turn around and head back into the Carthaginian ranks and trample Carthaginian soldiers. So the elephants are an absolute disaster for Hannibal in this battle. As the two armies approached each other, the Carthaginians unloosed their 80 elephants into the ranks of the Roman infantry. But the great beasts were soon dispersed and their threat neutralized. And there's another comparison with Waterloo here. I'm going to tell you about it in a minute. It's to do with Field Marshal Ney. The failure of the elephants' charge can likely be explained by a trio of factors, with the first two being well documented and most important. First, the elephants were not well trained, right? A bit like some of the troops at Waterloo, some of the cavalry at Waterloo. Listen to this. Um, Secondly, and perhaps even more vital to the outcome, Scipio had arranged his forces in small, flexible infantry units with broad alleys between them. And guess what Wellington did at Waterloo? He fought as Ney is charging with his cavalry towards the British army at Waterloo. The British army formed squares. And this is exactly what Scipio does with his army at Zama. It's amazing, the parallels. So he had trained his men to move to the side when the elephants charged, locking their shields and facing the alleys as the elephants passed by. That's obviously not a comparison there with Waterloo, but the first one is. That caused the elephants to run unimpeded through the lines with little, if any, engagement. Third, the loud shouts and blaring trumpets of the Romans may have disconcerted the elephants, some of which swerved to the side early in the battle and instead attacked their own infantry, causing chaos on the front line of Hannibal's recruits.
Oh dear.
Shocking. So in other words, what we've got is we've got this. Right, can you remember everything I said at Cana? Right, so obviously, what you've got is you've got. I've got to work out who's who. So the Romans are always in red, and the Carthaginians are in blue. So obviously the Carthaginians do outnumber the Romans, but if your men are not as trained as the Romans, only 12,000 of your men are really well trained. And actually, right, there's another parallel with Waterloo, Anne, right? And the parallel is that the old guard and the middle guard and were his elite, Napoleon's elite at Waterloo, and he used them at the last minute, right? And guess what Hannibal did? His elite army was used at the last minute and failed. Napoleon's elite army was used at the last minute and failed at Waterloo, right? They made the same mistakes, right? So thinking about this, so what we're going to do, we're going to look, I've got a better image than this. It's a bit like the ones that we used to get in school. So remember, the blue is Roman and the red is, you can see what I was talking about with the cavalry there. So Scipio's cavalry, the blue arrows, then charged the opposing Carthaginian cavalry on the wings, and the latter fled and were pursued. So the Carthaginian cavalry fled. So in other words, Hannibal's already lost the battle. It's exactly, I think, again, I've got to check if it's Naseby or Marston Moor. Somebody probably check this. Prince Rupert did the same thing at when they were facing the parliamentary model army at Naseby or Marston Moor, and the cavalry just charged and charged. It was around the other way round, actually. It was around the other way round, actually. Rupert's cavalry charged the parliamentary cavalry and disappeared off the field, right? So was never back engaged on the field. This is working the other way around, and the Royalist army lost, whether it Marston Moor or Naseby. So it's the other way around than what I'm explaining. But so cavalry is really important. If you can disorientate the cavalry and move the cavalry off the battlefield, right, your infantry can do the job. That's what I was trying to explain there. So the infantry legions then advanced and attacked Hannibal's infantry, which consisted of 3 consecutive lines. The Romans crushed the soldiers of the first line and then those of the second line. There's a repeat of Waterloo here, except Waterloo happens later. However, by that time, the legionaries had become nearly exhausted, and they had yet to close with the third line, which consisted of Hannibal's veterans from his Italian campaign. At that crucial juncture, the Numidian cavalry returned from their rout of the enemy cavalry and attacked the rear of the Carthaginian infantry. Hannibal stood no chance, who were soon crushed between the combined Roman infantry and the cavalry assault at the rear. Some 20 Carthaginians died in the battle. It was a complete bloodbath. They were cornered in. And actually, there's another comparison here. Those that have read the stories about Boudicca and the Battle of Watling Street will know that Boudicca turned up on the Battle of Watling Street. Wait for it, with 100,000 warriors versus 6,000 Romans. Okay, let's just move that away. 20,000 warriors versus 6,000 Romans at the Battle of Watling Street, because there were so many because there were so many on Boudicca's side. There was too many on the battlefield. They couldn't maneuver, right? Because they couldn't maneuver, the Romans were able to hem in Boudicca's army and wipe it out, right? And apparently the bones were left on the Battle of Watling Street after AD 61 for decades to show to people not to resist Roman rule. But numbers are not really good on a battlefield, as we saw against Darius and the wonderful Alexander the Great. So leading to the end here, the Greek historian Polybus states that Hannibal had done all that he could as a general in battle, especially considering the advantage held by his opponent. So in other words, a Roman writer is ending in tribute to Hannibal. The Romans wrote the history, but the Romans write it in they usually historians would say, oh, they were cowards, Hannibal was he didn't know what he was doing, but he said that he did the best that he could with his troops. That Hannibal was fighting from a position of weakness does not in any way diminish Scipio's victory for Rome, however. With the defeat of Carthage and Hannibal, it is likely that Zama awakened in Rome a vision of a larger future for itself in the Mediterranean. And as we finish here today, let's just go with an image, this one here. The Battle of Zama left Carthage helpless, and the city accepted Scipio's peace terms, whereby it ceded Spain to Rome, surrendered most of its warships, and began paying a 50-year indemnity to Rome. And I say history repeats itself. Look at the armistice after the shameful armistice that they forced the Germans to sign. The Germans never surrendered in the First World War. I always keep to that. The Germans signed an armistice. The Germans signed a shameful armistice, this indemnity they had to pay to the Allies for decades, right? The German army in the First World War, the Germans had to give up their warships in the First World War, right? Which they eventually had to sink. Exactly. This is what the Carthaginians faced thousands of years earlier. So it was shameful what happened to the Carthaginians, but in this, it would be the eventual end to the Carthaginians. Scipio was awarded the surname Africanus, Scipio the Great, victor over Africa. Hannibal escaped from the battle and went to his estates at Hadrumetum for some time before he returned to Carthage. For the first time in decades, Hannibal was without a military command, and never again did he lead Carthaginians into battle. The indemnity Rome set as payment from Carthage was 10,000 silver talents, more than 3 times the size of the indemnity demanded at the conclusion of the First Punic War. Shocking. This is what happened to the Germans after the First World War. They had to pay all their money, and it's crippled them, leading to the Second World War. Leading to the Third Punic War, may I add, which ended in Carthaginian defeat after the Germans were defeated in the Second World War, leading in German defeat. So, there's so many parallels in history. History does repeat itself, so be warned. Although the Carthaginians had publicly burnt at least 100 ships, Scipio did not impose harsh terms on Hannibal himself, and Hannibal was soon elected as a magistrate by popular vote to help administer a defeated Carthage. Concluding this lecture today, conclusively ending the Second Punic War months later in 201 BC, with a decisive Roman victory. The Battle of Zama must be considered one of the most important battles in ancient history. A decisive battle is a bit like Waterloo. Some say Stalingrad in the Second World War. Having staged a successful invasion of Africa and having vanquished its canniest and most implacable foe, Rome began its vision of a Mediterranean empire that would end where it ended in 146, the complete defeat of Carthage. And now Rome would then start to control the world as it saw it. So that's it tonight. Again, we have gone a little bit over, much over than I wanted to, but we'll finish now. We'll have to finish earlier next week because Pat likes an early finish. So okay. Anyone want to say anything? Henry.
No, very good. Very enlightening.
Thank you. And before you say it, I need to lie down in a dark room
Yeah.
or a dark car. Thank you, Henry. Anne.
I've written a note of that, hoping if it comes up in University Challenge, I'll be able to answer it in front of my husband.
Good. Cana, Zama, who was the victor at Cana, Hannibal, who was the victor at Zama, Scipio.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. Okay. Right. Anything from you, Goff?
No, it's very good. Very good images as well. So look forward to next week.
More images next week, and obviously you've got the presentation to look forward to, Goff, which is just images of the Roman Empire. It's just going to be a fest.
I did get the YouTube of the stone in Aberdeen. You sent me.
Oh, you got that one? Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
I'm gonna we'll send you the one about the fresco. So that'll be really good if you want to. I'll send that over to you. So
Okay.
right. So I really appreciate you guys, and I'll probably have a little bit of a chat with people on YouTube for a bit longer. But other than that, I'm gonna if anyone's got anything else to say it.
No, thank you very much.
Okay, I'm gonna say good night. Night night, Goff. Night night, Anne, and night night, Henry.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Night night, guys. Night night.
Bye-bye.
Night night, darlings. Night night. See you next week.
Okay, see you next week.
See you next week, guys. Nostalgie. Night night. Right, thank you guys on YouTube. I'm still here if anyone wants to ask anything. It was rather interesting tonight. We've had a few people chatting. It's a shame that Carl Kaznak didn't stay because that was a really good conversation that he was having. And Black Patches Dog as well. Good to have you on board. Emma, and obviously our friend the Dodgy Git. So yes, and everyone, don't forget to like and subscribe. I want to say that I appreciate that. But we'll be back here next Tuesday and Wednesday. Don't forget, we've got a ghost walk on Saturday at 7 o'clock. Emma knows all about it. And the Dodgy Git show, Get Stuff, Carl. Get Stuff. Yeah, I've got to get stuff, Carl. Because he gets great stuff. Oh, he said get stuff, great stuff. Oh my God, I don't know what I'm saying. Oopsie. Frozen. Great stuff. Yeah, good. Frozen. So I gotta go out now and feed the animals before I bugger off back to South Wales, and that's basically it for tonight. So if there's no more questions, I'm gonna go. And yes, that's it. I might actually have some rice pudding before I leave as well. I like rice pudding. Thank you, buds. All you buds, really appreciate your support. Yeah, Tuesday 7:10 usually before when I get going and we get online, and 7:10 when we get on Wednesday. We don't still always start at 7 because people ain't ready and I'm not ready and people ain't ready. So yeah, that's it. I'm just gonna look in the chat box. Anything in the chat box? Anything to say? Nothing there. No, night, guys. Nostalgie, nothing in that window. Where's that chat there? There's nothing in that chat. Right. Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much. Jam. Oh yeah. Thank you, Dodgy. I've got jam. I can put jam. Yes. You can't have you can't. It's a tin of rice pudding. You can't have jam without rice pudding. That is completely correct. Yeah, you are dead right. Okay, we are going to go now. Nostalgie, gwelwch chi eto ym yr o hyd. and we'll see you next week. And do you know, I might do some other live stuff because I think that might help my algorithms, and basically talk a little bit more. I've got some stuff that I might want to talk about, Um, check Polish shop for mega honey from loads of different flowers. You know what, right? I've got my Manuka honey, which cost me 25 quid online, which I actually use as a hoof medicine for my sheep. I put it on the sheep's hoof. So yeah, that's there. And so right. So I'm going now. Gotta get out. So nos da chi, diolch. I'm gonna go. Nothing in that chat box. 1, 2, 3. Nothing in there.